It is now my pleasure to introduce the Honorable Hillary Rodham Clinton, the 67th Secretary of State. Madam Secretary.
It's such a great delight to be back here at the State Department with so many former colleagues and so many friends. And I'm thrilled to be here at the new Hillary Clinton Pavilion. I'm sure you will notice it is the most transparent part of the entire project. And to be with my colleagues, Secretary Albright and Secretary Powell and Secretary Kerry, and to know that all of the former living secretaries have really pledged their efforts to bringing about this diplomacy center. And Pat Kennedy, to you and every member of the Foreign and Civil Service, as well as the local nationals who represent our interests around the world, thank you. Thank you for devoting your lives to our country. Serving alongside you was one of the great honors of my life, and I will always be proud of the work we did together. I want to recognize Ambassador Bagley, who was tireless in pursuit of the opportunity to tell the story of the center and bring more attention to it, and to all the donors who worked so hard to bring this to life. I'm excited about the historic artifacts and the cutting-edge exhibits that will be here to teach and inspire future generations about the work of our country's diplomats. And I'm particularly pleased to see my friend and my Congresswoman Nita Lowey here, who has been instrumental in supporting the work of the State Department and USAID over so many years in the Congress. Students and visitors alike will be able to simulate high-stakes diplomatic negotiation, learn more about resolving disputes in our increasingly interconnected and interdependent world. I think we should look for some dispensation when the center is finally finished and opened to the public to toast it with the vodka from the AK-47 bottle and stand in front of Madeline's pins trying to decipher what they all mean. This will also help more Americans understand the ways in which their generosity and innovation have improved lives around the world. There will be, for example, a clean cook stove on display. That is another one of the public-private partnerships that we launched to prevent millions of needless deaths from dirty stoves and toxic smoke around the world. There will be so many opportunities for visitors to get a deeper understanding of what that word diplomacy means. And every secretary since Jefferson and generations of diplomats will have their work reflected in this museum. We may have belonged to different political parties, served in different eras, faced different challenges, but we all believed deeply in the United States of America and the mission that our country has to lead the world with strength, smarts, and confidence in our values. Diplomacy is one of the greatest forces for peace, prosperity, and progress the world has ever known. And today, the lessons of this museum are more vital and urgent than ever. Democracy, freedom, and the rule of law are under attack around the world. A rising tide of authoritarianism and illiberalism threatens the foundations of the post-World War II global era that American diplomats have built and defended since Marshall and Atchison. And at a time when the long-standing bipartisan goal of a Europe that is whole, free, and at peace is under enormous pressure, we would do well to remember what it feels like to stand in the shadow of the giant segment of the Berlin Wall that will greet visitors here at the center. It's signed by leaders who helped end the Cold War, unify Germany, and expand democracy. So, history has a lot to teach us. It also is a reminder that we have our own challenges and our own opportunities. We should remember that the world looks to America as the indispensable nation, not just because of the size of our military or the strength of our economy. It looks to us because America stands for universal values and aspirations. And if we stay true to those values, like the best of the men and women whose leadership and service will be commemorated here, then our country will weather every storm on the horizon. Thank you all very much.
Madam Secretary. It is now my pleasure to introduce the 68th and current Secretary of State, the Honorable John F. Kerry.
Thank you very, very much for joining us for this wonderful occasion, and I am particularly grateful for you being here to hold my hand on the cusp of my becoming one of the most visible unemployed people in America. I join everybody in being delighted to open this new, or to recognize the finishing of the Diplomacy Center Pavilion. And it's really a pleasure, a special pleasure, to welcome Madeleine and Colin and Hillary back here. And I know each and every one of you have already demonstrated your affection and your gratitude for their service and for what they've done to help make this possible. I couldn't help but think that just a little while ago we had a goodbye ceremony for Tony Blinken, who has been an absolutely superb deputy and done an extraordinary job. And he graciously praised me by saying that I never quit. And I wondered immediately whether or not I could apply that to January 20th or not. But I don't think I would be so lucky. I also, as I listened to Colin talk about an AK-47 filled with vodka, I said, man, I'm going to tell, if Rex Tillerson gets proved and that happens, I'm going to suggest that he make certain that every AK-47 in the world be filled with vodka. That would be a better world, folks. We're going to work on that. As folks have mentioned, it's been just 2 years since the former secretaries and all of us joined out in front here to break ground on this remarkable facility. And it's really hard to believe that so much has been accomplished so quickly. There are a lot of people to thank for that, and one of them's already been singled out, but I want to single her out again. Ambassador Elizabeth Bagley is indefatigable. She has excelled at the hard and thankless task of fundraising like nobody else before. And I want to give you all a little bit of advice. Urge all of you who have been avoiding eye contact with her, surrender. Resistance is useless. The force is with her, folks. And Elizabeth, we owe you just an enormous debt of gratitude. And the same goes for the generous donors who are here with us. We are so grateful to you for stepping up and being part of this. And I ask you just to look around you at this magnificent building. This is going to be a winner. It's going to be an extraordinary addition to the mosaic of our incredible museums here in this city, the nation's capital. Visually impressive, educational, enduring, patriotic, and long overdue. And make no mistake, we could not have gotten anywhere, much less this far, without your willingness to take a flyer and believe in this enterprise. So thank you. But in any marathon, the last few miles are the most challenging. And I am duty-bound to say to you, we got a couple of miles still to go. The finish line is still up ahead, and I ask everyone and anyone who has the ability to help recruit others to help us finish this off. Let us bridge the gap between what we have and what we need. Now, also, I really want to thank my predecessors. The idea of a facility such as this has been around for quite a while. And under the leadership of Kathy Johnson, the U.S. Diplomacy Center has an ongoing program of education and outreach, and it already has gathered more than 7,000 historic artifacts. That is a number that will be augmented and classed up by the very generous contribution of Secretary Albright's famously expressive pins or brooches. I might add, I think, given the value of some of them, she's probably raised the insurance rate of the building, too, in doing so. We have amazingly long lacked a appropriate venue where we could create a visitor-friendly and interactive set of exhibits that would bring diplomacy to life. And it was during Secretary Albright's tenure that the project really kicked off, and her initiative has been obviously strongly supported by secretaries from Secretary Kissinger all the way through Secretary Clinton. I hope all of you will join me, because they are the force that really got this going. I got to come in here when the plans were done and we're well along the way, but I think all of us should join them in saying a special thank you for what they have created for our nation and for the capital. I want to thank Ambassador Bill Harrop and the Diplomacy Center Foundation. They deserve enormous credit for their leadership and for gathering support from the founding ambassadors. Now, this all leads to a question which has been spoken to some degree by each of my colleagues, and that is, why is it important that we share the story of American diplomacy? Well, the answer, I think, begins with one of my favorite poems by Robert Frost, in which a tree falls across the road in the middle of the woods, and the obstacle forces a traveler to halt in his tracks and, quote, get down in a foot of snow debating what to do without an axe. That strikes me as a pretty fair description of what diplomacy is all about. Solving the trees in the road, the unexpected problems without an axe. And there's no magic formula for success. It requires the right combination of knowledge, leverage, advocacy, reason, and timing. And especially when differences are narrow, it can benefit from strong personal relationships, such as those forged by each of the secretaries sitting here at the dais. And I know from my own experience that although countries are always guided by their own interests, face-to-face discussions can still influence how those interests are judged, how they are met, and sometimes turning a no to a perhaps, or even better, maybe to yes. I think every secretary here has seen that happen. As the exhibits in this pavilion will one day show, the accomplishments of American diplomacy are inseparable from the birth, youth, and growth of our country. And that was hinted at from the very beginning when Mr. Benjamin Franklin, who is reputed to be our first diplomat, introduced himself to the court of King Louis XVI Imagine a minister who could out-talk his counterparts, outmaneuver his rivals, out-flirt the French, and outwork anyone in pursuit of freedom and independence for our infant country. In subsequent years, American diplomats were indispensable in ending foreign conflicts, expanding our nation's boundaries, and laying the foundation for international cooperation through development and through the United Nations, the Bretton Woods institutions, NATO, the OAS, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. During the Cold War, our diplomacy remained in high gear. It made all the difference, successfully containing the communist threat and eluding the perils of an era in which countries were compelled to rely for survival on the concept of mutually assured destruction. In more recent years, we've moved to enlarge the Euro-Atlantic community, halt ethnic cleansing in the Balkans, dismantle the most dangerous aspects of Iran's nuclear program, forge a global coalition against Daesh terrorists, restore relations with Cuba, and take unprecedented steps to curb the dangers posed by climate change. Obviously, that's just scratching the surface. George Kennan compared diplomacy to overseeing his Pennsylvania farm, where the woods were constantly growing and fences were falling down, and paint peeling and insects burrowing and roofs leaking and harsh weather arriving in defiance of all predictions. The sole certainty was the need for vigilance, because nothing ever stood still, and this place will be a monument to that maxim. By keeping pace and by ensuring that American leadership is not only still needed in the world but broadly welcomed, our diplomats have written a truly extraordinary tale that will bear telling over and over again for generations. And we will soon have the ideal place in which to relate that story. So once again, I thank our donors and the former secretaries who have contributed so much. I also congratulate Pat Kennedy and his team on the superb job that they have done, our superb architectural firm, Beyer Blinder Bell, and the men and the women of the Gilbane Construction Company, which I know well from Massachusetts, New England, and the Heery International, and everyone else who has played a constructive role in this effort. I want to emphasize that, picking up a little bit on what Hillary said, this could not be happening at a better time. There are many voices in the world who have essentially given up on diplomacy. They see, and some openly encourage, the breakdown of cooperation, the building of economic and political walls, and the growth of mistrust and division along racial, ethnic, national, and religious lines. The story of American diplomacy reflects a far different and far more uplifting vision, one of optimism about the ability of people from vastly different backgrounds to work together productively and in peace. We know that that can happen abroad. Why? Because we've done it here at home. And no country has melted more people of different backgrounds, of varied aspirations and hopes than we have in the United States of America. That's the great thing that separates us from every other country in the world. We're not defined by ethnicity. We're not defined by lineage. We're not defined by names. We're not defined by where we come from. We are defined by an idea. Unlike most other nations, the idea is that all people are created equal and that you can pursue life, liberty, and happiness. So I welcome all of you optimists, difference makers, and history lovers to this pavilion, and I thank each and every one of you for your enthusiasm and your support, and may this new year be filled with the good fortunes and the blessings that you and we in the United States of America deserve. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming this evening to the celebration. Please take time to explore the temporary exhibit and have a good evening. Thank you.